The storm raged on, its howling winds rattling the windows of the old library where Ella sat, her fingers brushing against the brittle edges of a centuries-old journal. She shouldn't have been there. The employee's only sign was bold and red, glaring down at her like an unspoken warning. But Ella had always been curious, perhaps too curious. Her heart quickened as she turned the fragile page, the words etched in a language older than any she'd ever seen. Yet, somehow, she understood them. How could that be? The journal belonged to an archaeologist named Dr. Alistair Kane, a man who had vanished in 1923 while on an expedition in the remote mountains of Anatolia. His last known discovery? A tomb that locals referred to only as the Weeping Vault. According to legend, the vault housed the remains of an ancient sorcerer cursed to eternal torment. The curse, as the journal described, was not meant to trap the sorcerer, but to guard the world from him. Ella's eyes darted to a sketch in the journal, a small, unassuming artifact shaped like a crescent moon, its surface inscribed with symbols that seemed to shimmer, even on paper. Beneath the sketch, in hasty scrawl, were the words, "Do not touch it. Do not speak its name. To awaken the crescent of morning is to invite the end." A chill crept up her spine, and for a moment, the room felt colder than it should have. Have you ever felt that sudden, inexplicable dread, as though something unseen was watching you? That's what Ella felt now. She closed the journal, her breath shaky, and glanced at her phone. 11:58 p.m. She should leave, she thought. The library's after-hours air was thick with an unsettling silence, broken only by the occasional creak of the old building. Yet, she couldn't shake the pull of that journal. It felt as though it had been waiting for her, as if she was meant to find it. Against her better judgment, she slipped the journal in her bag and made her way home, the storm drenching her coat as she sprinted to her car. But even in the safety of her apartment, the journal seemed to hum with an unnatural energy. She could almost hear whispers, faint and fragmented, just beyond the edge of comprehension. That night, she dreamed of a barren wasteland under a blood-red sky. In the distance, she saw the crescent of morning, glowing faintly as a figure cloaked in shadows approached it. The figure's face was obscured, but its voice, deep and guttural, spoke directly to her. "You cannot stop it now." She woke up drenched in sweat, her heart pounding. On her bedside table, the journal lay open, though she was certain she had closed it before falling asleep. The page it displayed was blank, save for a single line written in the same ancient script. "You were chosen." What would you have done? Would you have closed the journal and walked away? Or would you have done what Ella did? Surrendered to the burning need to know more? Over the next few days, Ella's life spiraled into chaos. She saw shadows that didn't belong, heard whispers in languages she couldn't name, and always, she felt the weight of unseen eyes on her. She tried to research the crescent of morning, but there was almost nothing about it. Only scattered references and obscure texts, each more cryptic than the last. One thing was clear, though. The artifact wasn't just a relic. It was a key, and it was meant to stay hidden. But where was it now? The journal hinted that Dr. Kane had taken it from the tomb. If so, where had he hidden it? And why did Ella feel as though it was calling to her? She finally found a lead in a dusty online forum dedicated to unsolved mysteries. A user with the handle Watcher1923 claimed to know the location of Dr. Kane's final expedition journal, which reportedly contained the artifact's whereabouts. The user's cryptic message read, "Seek the answers where the earth meets the sky." Ella's search led her to a remote cliffside monastery in Turkey, perched high above the clouds. The journey was treacherous, filled with narrow, winding paths and biting winds. The monks there were reluctant to speak of the artifact, their faces grim as they muttered prayers under their breath. One elderly monk finally relented, leading her to a hidden chamber deep within the monastery. "It is not meant for you," he warned, his voice trembling. But perhaps it is too late. The chamber was empty save for a pedestal, upon which lay a weathered, leather-bound book. As she reached for it, the monk grabbed her wrist. "Beware the cost of knowing," he whispered. "Have you ever ignored a warning, thinking it was mere superstition?" That's what Ella did. She opened the book, and as her eyes scanned its pages, she realized the horrifying truth. The crescent of morning wasn't just a key. It was a beacon, a lure for something ancient and malevolent that had been waiting for centuries to break free. The moment she closed the book, the ground beneath her trembled. The monk screamed in a language she couldn't understand as the walls of the chamber cracked and splintered. Ella barely escaped the monastery before it collapsed into the abyss below. Back in her apartment, the whispers grew louder, more insistent. Shadows moved of their own accord, and her reflection in the mirror began to distort, her eyes hollow and filled with darkness. The journal, the one she had taken from the library, now displayed pages she had never seen before, detailing rituals and sacrifices tied to the artifact. Each page ended with the same phrase: "You cannot escape." Ella became desperate. She tried to destroy the journal, but it wouldn't burn. She tried to return it to the library, but the building had mysteriously caught fire the night after she had taken it. There was no one left to return it to. And then the dreams returned. Night after night, she saw the shadowy figure growing closer to the crescent of morning. The final dream was the worst. The figure turned to her, and for the first time, she saw its face. It was her own. When she woke up, the artifact was on her bedside table. The crescent of morning was smaller than she had imagined, its crescent shape smooth and cold to the touch. As soon as she picked it up, a searing pain shot through her hand, and she heard a voice, not deep and guttural this time, but soft and seductive. "You could end this, or you could unleash it." Ella's mind raced. She remembered the rituals in the journal, the warnings of the monks, the visions in her dreams. The artifact was not just a key, it was a choice. She could destroy it, but the cost might be her own life. Or she could use it, unleash whatever was trapped, and risk dooming the world. What would you do? Would you sacrifice yourself to protect others? Or would curiosity or fear drive you to open the door? Ella chose. She performed the ritual, her voice shaking as she chanted the incantation from the journal. The room grew impossibly dark, the air heavy with the stench of sulfur. The whispers turned to screams, and the walls seemed to bend and ripple as if reality itself was tearing apart. And then it was over. The artifact crumbled to dust in her hands, and the room fell silent. But Ella knew it wasn't the end. The shadowy figure had been freed, and it had marked her as its vessel. Now, Ella's reflection watches her with eyes that aren't her own, and the whispers never truly stop. Somewhere in the depths of her mind, she feels the presence, waiting, watching, and growing stronger. Did Ella save the world, or did she doom it? Perhaps the answer doesn't matter, because the curse has already passed on. And who knows? Maybe it's watching you now. If this story left you unsettled, curious, or eager for more, subscribe to the channel. There are more tales waiting to be unearthed, more mysteries to uncover, and perhaps, just perhaps, more truths you're not ready to face.